Hello everyone, this is the 2019 Clasica Sebastian review or recap. The race took place about a week ago, so finally it's time to recap the Classic. And it proved to be another super exciting edition with a completely a relative unknown winner in a 19-year-old Remco Evenepoel, and complete surprise. And Remco kind of like flashed, on the screen kind of last year, and this year he started having major results on the, in a 2.1 category and HC category races. And he kind of flashed in front of my screen a couple of times with interest, but nobody really has ever expected that a rider this young and relatively inexperienced on a world tour level was going to win one of the most revered, one of the most wanted classics in the world peloton, the Pro Tour peloton. Now, whether the Clasica Sebastian is considered one of the greatest monuments in cycling, that is debatable. However, having Clasica Sebastian in your Palomers definitely gets you a contract. It is, I would say, a race right straight below the classic monuments like Tour of Lombardy or like Tour de Flandre, Milan-San Remo. It is, ranked just almost the same as them, and every single rider absolutely dreams of winning the Classic, and it just happened this year for a 19-year-old Remco. He was originally on the squad to support Alaphilippe, right? Alaphilippe clearly probably tired from his Tour de France effort. I think abandoned the race super early, like kilometer 80. It just wasn't for him, felt tired, and Remco from a support role basically got an open card. And this is what a rider would look for, right? To take every chance possible to kind of prove himself in the world tour level. And congrats for Remco for taking a chance, not just writing it out. And apparently he was feeling bad earlier on a stage and kind of was demoted into more of a support level, right? The last guy that brings the bottles and food from the car. And, when Alaphilippe abandoned, Remco basically started feeling better and, put in an attack, surprising attack, that eventually got him an amazing victory that everybody dreams about. So Remco, I checked a couple of times before, but he's definitely a rider to watch for the future. When I look at his Palomers, right, on cycling stats, he's actually pretty good. Let me look at it. Let me find him here. In 2019, right? So we're looking at 2019. So right before Clasica Sebastian, I think during even, let's see here, this was 28-7, so literally right after the Tour de France, Remco got an 8th place in Adriatic-Ionica race, right, which is a tough race in southern Italy. But also, the Balios Belgium Tour, he got the first general classification there and winning one of the stages, coming fourth on one of the time trial stages. There's a race in Holland called Hammer Limburg, and he also was first in that in May of this year. So I'm following him, and he's winning a lot. There's a race in Norway, for example, too, that comes in pretty early in April, or May. No, it's in May. Hammer Stavanger, and he actually won one of the stages there. But he seems to be a very good overall rider. He seems to be very talented in the time trials, and actually very talented in the GC as well. So it was pretty pretty amazing victory, but this is going to be a rider to be watched in the next maybe about couple of years, okay? It's definitely going to be harder now for him to steal another victory like that, but all gratitude and all kudos to him for really breaking away and holding off a group of amazing best bike riders in the world, regardless if they were marking each other or not. So, you know, again, super tough race, 227 kilometers, several climbs, including, you know, some of the brutal climbs like Morgil. I'm looking at the profile here, trying to find a profile now. 7 climbs, okay? You know, the race was pretty standard. I'm looking at the, you know, my notes. And it was, you know, it was really the local guys that initiated, that expected the break, right? You know, the break kind of kept dropping on a mountainous terrain. And the last one to be left up front, the guy who actually won the mountain jersey, was the Fernando Barquelo from the Escadai local team, from the old remainder, the more of a semi-professional now outfit, smaller pro outfit of the old and famous Escadie orange jerseys team, which we kind of remember with fond memories. I think we all have fond memories of a old Escadie team, and you know, the guys basically breaking away every chance they get, and famous Basque flags out there. But he was the only one left, and he lasted the longest up until about 48 kilometers left from the finish, where, you know, the real race started. And it was really the movie star and CCC a little bit, and maybe Astana, that kind of controlled the race. And then around 21 kilometers from the finish, right? So in between, right, in a valley road, in a flat road between the two last climbs, the breakaway sticks, right? It was Tom Schools from Trek Segafredo. We know him from the Tour de France participation. And of course, it was Remco Evenepoel that eventually, you know, broke away. And by the foot of the climb, which kind of came around, maybe around 9 kilometers to go, right? They actually built an advantage of about 45 seconds. So they, you know, the teams, you know, kind of chased, kind of didn't, kind of watched each other, because nobody really expected that those two can actually get over the Morgil and shoot down on a descent all the way towards the end. So nobody really expected they were going to survive the final climb. The teams kind of gave them a little bit of an advantage. They did not organize, did not chase properly. And by the time they hit Morgil with about, I want to say 9 kilometers left, they were still at about 42 seconds ahead of what was, you know, left out of the peloton. So, you know, they hit the climb. I was really impressed by, you know, Evenepoel's cadence, right? The way he was pedaling, it really, you know, it didn't look like he was tired. He didn't have an empty tank, even on a descent. It was pretty amazing to kind of compare Tom Schools, you know, with Evenepoel, because they kind of a little bit at one point were trading blows. And behind them, you know, the group of favorites wasn't really making any way. I think it came down eventually to about 34 seconds, but that's nothing. They only made up maybe about 10 seconds on that whole tough, brutal, you know, slopes of a Morgil, which in, you know, I think one, in couple of 100 meters, it hit 19-20%, and then the entire average gradient was like 10% for 2 kilometers. So very tough end to a very tough day. The interesting thing is that in the end, right, touching here, in the end, on top of the climb, Evenepoel eventually dropped Tom Schools, right, and went over the top alone. And behind him, initially there was Movistar. There was one guy from Movistar setting the pace. There was Astana setting the pace. Eventually there was an attack, kind of an attack, because nobody did clear, get an advantage. Alejandro Valverde kind of went for acceleration, could not drop anyone out of the main favorites. Then it was Patrick Conrad that also put in, the Austrian champion, put in another acceleration, the leader for this race for the Bora Hansgrove team. And then eventually towards the end, it was Hugh Carthy, which is one of my favorite riders out there, super attacking, great mountain goat, but taller, right? Not a typical small climber, taller climber, and the guy to also watch for, upcoming races and upcoming seasons. So he put in a dig, and he finally got a little bit of a gap, and he kind of brought him over the top, but the riders caught him over the top. And one of the last guys to make it in a group of favorites, which probably counted like about 15 guys at that point, 15, was Greg van Avermaet. So my favorite for the finish out from the group was kind of one of the last guys. I think 2 or 3 guys got a little bit gapped, but it was about 50 meters in the end over the hill, and he made it over the hill and rejoined. And from that point on, there should be I'm sure they knew what the advantage was. The advantage at the top was about 32 seconds. And there was 15 guys, about 10 of them were favorites. Bauke Mollema was there, Alejandro Valverde was there, Michael Woods was there, Hugh Carthy was there, who else? Henrik Mas was there, Patrick Conrad was there, all the favorites, Greg van Avermaet, who else? Giulio Ciccione was there. Johnny Zagira was there from Astana. Mark Hirishi, which is actually a surprising name to hear in that caliber of a race. But the problem was that they were not organized. They kept only attacking each other, and Envelope really descended super well, all the way to all the way down the bottom of the descent, and then he had like 2.53 kilometers left flat to the finish. And meanwhile, behind, you could have seen for the second time in the race, the favorites were kind of like looking at each other. So the first time they gave Tom Scholes and Remco Evenepoel gap on the flat towards the Morgil, right? So they hesitated. They didn't send the full team. They let him kind of go for 40 seconds. And then the second time, they hesitated, looking at each other again and slightly attacking. When they were coming off the Morgil with about 5-6 kilometers to go, there was no unity, there was no chase, and eventually I think by like 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers left, he still have about 27, 28 seconds, and at that point it was a race for the second place for the group of favorites. Remco Evenepoel took an incredibly surprising and amazing victory by him. It certainly should secure him a contract with Decunick for the next year. Later on, I think it was on Thursday, Patrick Lefebvre, a boss of Decunick Quick-step, said he actually had a handshake with a guy for the contract. So that's coming up, but this just comes to show you taking chances in professional racing, professional bike riding, right? Using every chance that was given to him really secured him a next year or the year after contract. And this is going to be the guy that we're going to have to watch for the future, along with Egan Bernal, because this guy is certainly very special. We'll have to see how he develops, if he develops more into a classic rider, or if he goes more into the stage races, right? There are similarity between the two, Evenepoel and Alaphilippe, but I think Evenepoel, up until the Tour de France, I thought he was a better time trialist, but apparently Alaphilippe proved everyone wrong there. So there was obviously a sprint finish for the second place, and Greg van Avermaet took a second place finish, which is actually great news for a CCC team, which actually have struggled this year to get results. I'm going to try to start like a weekly video on transfers as well. Matteo Trentin is coming to help out Greg van Avermaet for the 2-year contract next year. So it's going to be more interesting. Greg van Avermaet is going to have more support this time, but good result for a CCC man, and it should kind of boost their sponsors, to continue the sponsorship, because it's been kind of dry this year for them. With that said, the top 10 was kind of regular guys, except Mark Hirschi, which came third. Great result for him. The Sunweb man from Switzerland. Van Avermaet was second. Mollema, Izagirre, right? Izagirre Gorka took fourth. Mollema was fifth. Patrick Conrad, Jeleven and Dert. And then we had Michael Woods, Mas Nicolas, and Alejandro Valverde, Rudy Mollard, and Ciccioni. So that was the group of the 5 favorites that was chasing. So again, super surprising edition of the Clasica San Sebastian. Fantastic watching. I mean, all day long, beautiful, beautiful vistas all throughout the northeastern part of Spain, in a Basque Country. It almost makes me want to go there and ride those hills, right, at some point. Great part of the world, and beautiful roads. And again, it was just amazing racing, especially towards the end. Like if you tuned in, we always talk about like watching the races extended, right? That could be an issue sometimes. Because not much really is happening in the middle of those, stage races. But if you actually tune in within an hour, last hour, it's action-packed always, right? And, at some point, the broadcasters would have to make that choice, right? Do I tune in, an hour and a half before, before the end of the race? That would be something, maybe a couple of hours, but not the entire race. But I certainly really enjoyed, watching it. You should have seen I'm sure you saw, the fan base at Morgil was unbelievable. It was like the old days, with Basque flags all over the place. The descent was super fast. The action was great. So this was it for Clasica Sebastian 2019. Again, surprising winner. We have another young guy, the young gun that's coming into the sport, and we definitely should be excited about that. All right, stay tuned for the other videos. Tour de Pologne review is coming with a very, very, very sad death of Lotto Soudal rider there, Bjork. We definitely all think about you, and I'm going to be doing separate video, about the crash, about the rider safety, and also reviewing the Tour de Pologne. Okay, stay tuned for other videos, and if you liked the video, hit like. If you like the channel, subscribe. Leave me general comments below. Hopefully you are riding out there. Still beautiful summer. And I'm definitely getting out there all the time, and hopefully you are too, okay? All right, see you next time.